Was there any indication of what your current trajectory was going to be like today? Did you have that in your mind?
No clue. I'm sure if you went back and asked people back then, would Jude end up here? Not a chance. I had to pause and say to myself, if I don't do this, if I don't kind of listen to the voice, I feel like I'm failing them. It probably that moment when I had to make the decision about whether to go back into full-time work was really something really hit me that I have this deeper purpose that I need to fulfill. I started working with a coach 3 years ago, and I think that was the best decision ever. It really allowed me to learn to prioritize myself and to put in place, boundaries so that I don't give way too much, and I make sure I carve out time to do things that I love doing. I look back and I always say, like, did that really happen? But I genuinely remember this recruiter calling me and saying, we're recruiting for this American bank. I didn't know who they were because I hadn't really followed the tech scene at the time. And she said, they're looking for happy people. And at first I'm thinking, this is some wacky old place that I'm going to get hired into. And it's going to be really weird.
Hello, June. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Nice to see you, Daya.
Thank you very much for joining me on the Roots and Wings podcast. I was shocked when I found out that you actually were born in Lagos and you lived there for 16 years. I was like, how did I not know that?
17 to be precise.
17. That's
Yeah.
crazy. And especially in a place called Yaba, which is the tech hub of Lagos, right? What do you remember about your childhood?
My goodness, growing up in Yaba was fun, but it was like super entrepreneurial. As you say, obviously now it's the tech hub, but I've always known it as a commercial district, mainly because my family operated Domino stores literally on our doorstep. So for me, my route every day was actually school, pop into Domino, go to my mom's office, go to my uncle's office, and then go to my grandpa's office. And they all were sort of on the same floor. And for me, growing up in that environment where I got to observe supermarkets, what it meant to have customers at the heart of your business, but also employees. I saw how my mom and my uncle and my grandfather really treated everyone with such care and really wanted them to succeed from the get-go. But in our little vicinity of Yaba, just making sure that the customers got everything they wanted. And it was a great experience from the moment they entered the store to when they left. And that meant that everyone, all the shop attendants were very well dressed, that everything was well presented. So that sense of excellence really started from my early days. And when we were on holiday, we would be put to work. We would go to the store and mom would get us to tidy the shelves, and sometimes we get to sit at the till. It was those sort of things that made me really really appreciate why they did what they did. Why mom would spend many hours at Domino, and at the weekends we would always pop in. It was never a sense of switching off, because when it's something, it's yours. You're going to want to ensure that it succeeds. So I think really growing up around entrepreneurs, I think definitely shaped me and made me who I am today. But early days were all about family. The Murray Bruce family is very, very big. Having lots of aunts and uncles. There was 5 boys and 5 girls, and I'm incredibly close to all my aunts and uncles. And I distinctly remember spending a lot of time in their houses, and it never felt like anyone's house was separate. I almost felt like it was an extension of my house, which was really, really special to have as a child, to feel, like there's this open door policy. You can pop into anyone's house at any point. So I literally felt like I had, 5 other dads, and I had 4 other moms, and there was no distinction. My grandma often took me to school and people thought she was my mom. I spent a ton of time, and again, this is the village that we talk about, growing up with. I really did have a village, around me, a ton of love, super close to my cousins. And, I see them as siblings, which, you don't get over here. It's very, very different. So I feel very lucky that I can count on every one of them today. And that's because, I grew up in Yaba.
You've mentioned before that your mom and grandma are your role model, right? Your role
Absolutely.
models, right? Actually, can you explain how your relationship with your grandma and your mom, especially in the early days, shaped the foundation as a woman and as a human being?
Absolutely. Okay, we'll start with my mom. Obviously, she raised us, and I feel that I definitely owe everything to her. I watched how she worked, and just again that level of excellence with which she did everything. She had been called back to Nigeria by her father when she turned 30. And that's when I was born. So I was actually born in the UK. And then he said to her, look, it's time to learn the ropes. It's a family business. And I want you to come back and sort of be my right hand alongside my uncle. And I saw how family meant a lot to her. She would do anything for family. And she really did take that I think of making a promise like very, very seriously. So she obviously promised my grandfather that she would look after this business and she would ensure that it stuck around for a long time. Not many family businesses last this long. Domino's Stores has been going for 50 years now, if not more. And she's been with the company since she was 30. She's turned 70 2 years ago. And I just think, for someone to make that promise and really deliver on it, I think has been a big inspiration for me. But also that just hard work. She works really hard. Um, and actually, she does this with such a sense of humility. She never brags. You'll never see her in the papers. She has zero interest in publicity. Well, this is why, for me, it's very important to give her flowers, because I think those are the people that I really look up to. Those who don't shout about what they're doing. They just do it quietly, get on with it. Everyone in the company deeply respects her. They go to her, like, she always has this long queue of people trying to get into her office, and it's because she gives such good advice. She doesn't really just see them as employees, and she there's so much care. She knows about their family business. She knows what's going on at home, if they've got any troubles when it comes to health. If any of them are unwell, she's the first to be like, we'll sort out your medical bills. And I saw that that's something you should prioritize. When you think about building a business that's going to stand the test of time, and I look at the employees and how they've had people work with them for decades. Recently had a celebration last year, and there was someone who'd been there literally from the get-go. He started as a security man, and he kind of went up the ranks, working in the shop, becoming a manager. And this is the kind of nurturing and care which she and her brother have really provided for all the employees at Domino, and watching them scale the business from just a handful of supermarkets to the mall, and to cinemas. And I think this is all a sign that when you work hard, when you work as part of a team, she's not looking to be the hero. It's very much about collaboration, but also taking the temperature in the room, listening to your customers and doing things at the right time. And basically, you don't mess with my mom. She is very much on top of everything. She knows what is going on in every corner. That attention to detail, she really has that. So I think she's just up there when it comes to female leadership. And then my grandmother, the homemaker, the nurturer. She, when I look at how she was able to just give so much love and attention to everyone, I think for me it's just mind blowing. She came from a very simple background, and she didn't spend much time in school, but you'd never know. She was like on top of the news. You could not compete with her for general affairs. she was she was that person who like just knew everything that was going on in the world. She read a lot. She read all the papers daily, and it just shows that never underestimate people. Again, she's someone who you couldn't get anything past her. She knew she could sense. She had a good sense for people. But I will say one thing that always surprised me, even though she had her challenges, growing up, she never held anything against anyone. She was the most forgiving person. And I think that's something that's really stuck with me. That thing of giving people second chances, like trying to see the best in people. I think I definitely got that from her, but also that sense of always creating community and going out on a limb for people, especially when they need you. I've always saw her do that. She would, keep relatives that came from the village. She'd keep them for months, and she always at the weekend would go to people's houses with food. She was a feeder. I absolutely love that about her. And I think food really brings people together. There was always food at her table. No matter what time of day you came to the house, she would feed you. And I really think it's so special.
That's beautiful to hear. And from just hearing you speak as well, it seems like even to this day, you're very close to your mom and your grandmom.
100%. Mama is no longer with us, but she's very much, in my heart. And I think, obviously the lessons will always stay with me.
Was there anyone else just growing up that you looked up to, or that shaped you aside from your mom and grandmom?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like we can't not talk about Uncle Ben. He's like, we grew up in this entertainment household, and I have to say, definitely watching him bring a lot of these visions to life. Silverbird Galleria. I remember going
I
to
do
the site.
remember. I remember
Yeah,
Silverbird so well. Such
he's this
a
dynamic.
exceptional human being.
He is. He's literally ball of energy, and he made our childhood fun. There is just no denying it. I will always remember, the contestants, many people don't know this, but they would come and they'd practice in my grandmother's house because there was a massive rotunda in front of the house. So they would use that space to do their dances. So we'd sit there, observing the choreographers, teaching them the dances. And very often, obviously, we had the backstage access, and we were involved in some of the proceedings at the Most Beautiful Girl in Nigeria. So I remember being on stage and one of those little children who was singing. So we would be on stage singing for the contestants, and we'd hand them the flowers. So it was really lovely kind of being a part of that energy, and being in the National Theatre in Nigeria, seeing all these stars come to the country, and knowing that he's made that happen. He's really put Nigeria on the map. I remember when Silverbird, the Rhythm Unplugged was being made, and going to Lekki. It was a jungle then. Who knew? And then this studio comes to life, and you kind of see magic happening. It's those early days of starting something new, bringing it to life, and it's sort of taking on a life of its own. Rhythm was the hottest station for a long time, and just being able to walk into the studio and be like, oh, maybe this could be me one day, it just kind of filled me with this sense of possibility, that you can do anything, even in Nigeria, as hard as it is. You bring a cinema to life, you bring people together and new experiences. And it really lit something in me, in those moments where I realized that, decide to do something and make it happen. It takes hard work, and bring people along that journey. He's an excellent storyteller. Um, and, it was quite fun once in a while to ride in those limousines.
Was there a lot of pressure because you came from a very heavy entrepreneurial family? Was there pressure to become an entrepreneur when you were little?
I mean, that's such a good question. I think I knew deep down I would work alongside entrepreneurs. I think for a while I probably thought, my journey was going to be going back to Nigeria and being a part of the family business. I came here to study, but I had plans to go back. I actually didn't really set off to remain here, but I think there's a part of me, having come from people who sort of determined their own destiny to an extent, that I knew that I would probably, go against the grain in some way, and I think that's ended up being sort of, my journey.
So you moved to the UK when you were 17, to be precise, right? Was that always on the
Absolutely.
cards? Like, was that something you knew you were going to do at some point, or something triggered you moving to the UK?
I always thought I was going to move to the UK or the US. However, it was made, someone brought it to my attention that apparently there was a period where my mother had doubts and she thought she was going to send me to Unilag. So it could have been very different. I think she was a little bit nervous, first child, letting me go. And I think she wanted me a bit close. Thankfully, my aunts and uncles advocated for me to be released. So I was allowed to come to the UK. All of them studied abroad. It was either the US or UK. And the UK was a natural fit for us, given we came every summer. It's a lot closer to Lagos. So I was released.
Was it a cultural shock for you, or was it easy for you to just fit in?
It was actually really easy because we used to come a lot in the holidays. We had a family home here. Um, I had quite a few relatives that had come ahead. So it felt quite natural, actually. And I think for me, knowing that Lagos was only a 6-hour flight, I think that kind of helped make the adjustment a lot easier. The weather, I must admit, was a bit trying because obviously we'd only ever come in the summer. So the first winter, I really remember thinking, please, who sent me? Why am I here? I should have chosen LA.
What did you study in school, and was that where you wanted to study when you left Nigeria?
So obviously I came here for my A levels and I was thankfully able to choose subjects I really enjoyed. I actually did psychology, math, and economics. I'd always been really interested in the economy. I enjoyed business studies when I was in secondary school, and I was really good at math. But do not ask me today to do any calculus. I did further math back in the day. It was my jam. I was that nerdy kid. Really, really studied during my time, doing my A levels. I got really, really good grades. And, when it came to making a decision around what to study at university, honestly, I really wanted to do psychology. It was obviously a few people spoke to me about the benefits of studying something like economics and it, having assessed my prospects, I figured actually maybe this was a better call to make. So I decided to study economics at UCL. And honestly, it was a fantastic experience. I think it really did lay the foundation to be able to do a lot of things. It's one of those degrees you can't really go wrong.
Do you remember your first job after school, after university?
Yes, and I definitely remember how I got it. It was as a result, it was a very random conversation with a good friend of mine at Notting Hill Carnival. It was this realization, it's August, and I'm like, I should be working soon. My mother's called me and she's like, well, your allowance will not be coming. It's time to, go out on your own. And I thought, okay, alarm bells, what am I going to do? One thing I did know was that I didn't want to go down the path that a lot of my friends were going down. Many of them had decided to go down the consulting route or investment banking. And I didn't feel like that was the path for me. So I was clear on that. That route was not going to be my path. And a friend of mine, thankfully, was like, we're hiring at Thompson Financial. Why don't you join us? And she really sold it. It sounded like a fantastic place, massive building, great lunches, great people. I said, I mean, what's not to love? And I figured, I will find my path from there. And I think, sometimes you have to be willing to take a bit of a chance. I don't think it always has to be super structured and, I'm very much go with the flow and really make sure that you're going to thrive in a particular environment. And I think anyone can succeed anywhere if you're in the right environment for you.
When I look at your trajectory, like it's kind of very similar to mine in the sense that like we just took opportunities as they
Yeah.
come. Um, but when you were in uni, did you feel like was there any indication of what your current trajectory was going to be like today? Like, did you have that in your mind?
No clue. I'm sure if you went back and asked people back then, would Jude end up here? Not a chance. No, I was not that focused. I was very much enjoying being at UCL. UCL was fantastic. It was central London. It was, yeah, surrounded by obviously great academics, but it was such a great place to learn, and I got to meet so many people. So actually, when I think of the university experience, I think it's very much about the people. The people that I met there have become my friends for life. There's an amazing woman who happened to be on my, corridor. She ended up being like my maid of honor. Who knew? But
Well,
these are the people and the experiences, and some of my best friends have been from UCL. So I think that's what UCL gifted me. It wasn't just the knowledge. It was beautiful friendships, and I don't take that for granted. I think, connections, and I always tell people, whatever room you're in, just get to know the people. You just never know.
you never know. You never know. And then you moved on to Silicon Valley Bank.
Yes.
Um, I've heard a story about how you landed that role, but I want to hear it again from you. It's
It's
kind
a
of
weird one.
interesting. Yeah.
Well, honestly, I look back and I always say, like, did that really happen? But I genuinely remember this recruiter calling me and saying, we're recruiting for this American bank. I didn't know who they were because I hadn't really followed the tech scene at the time. And she said, they're looking for happy people. And at first I'm thinking, this is some wacky old place that I'm going to get hired into. And it's going to be really weird. I almost didn't go for the interview. Funny enough, I just wasn't sure what to make of that. I thought that's a very odd thing to say, but I got it. I walked through the door when I went for my interview, and genuinely, there was such an energy in the room. And I then understood what she meant and what she was trying to kind of get from our conversation. Because I think when you're working in a startup environment, first of all, you need tons of energy, you need tons of optimism. And I think what she meant out of, instead of happy people, she meant optimistic people, because there we were, maybe about 20 people applying for a banking license in a very tough environment, and really trying to replicate what had been done in Silicon Valley in the UK in a much more conservative environment, one where there wasn't a traditional like tech VC ecosystem. It was all very nascent. This was back in 2011. So it was a very, very ambitious plan, and you really did need certain types of people who were natural connectors, but ultimately people. You had to be a people person to make this work, because not only were you going to be working with really impressive venture capitalists, you're going to be working with some super dynamic founders who had this dream, and you really had to get on board with that dream, but you kind of needed to be able to cut through the noise. So there were so many moving parts, and it was a gamble. What if they didn't get the license? There would be no job. So you really needed to be able to go on that journey with them. And I think that's kind of what she was trying to get from, our initial conversation. And that when I came in meeting the team, it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. I was blown away by their vision. I was blown away by just the opportunity ahead. They really took me on that journey of what it could be, really being at the center of the ecosystem, bringing in VCs and, being the source of venture debt, but also being the first port of call for any founder, as they embark on this global opportunity.
Was that where your first love for like VC came into play for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I just realized, capital, creates opportunity. And ultimately, whether we were providing venture debt or the company was getting venture capital, it was allowing them to really supercharge this dream and make it a reality. I think I got to meet some very, very impressive people, over the years. The first deal I worked on was Farfetch. Getting to meet Jose and really seeing how he was thinking about bringing this to life. I mean, there are many naysayers, and obviously that's been an interesting journey to observe, but he made it happen. What felt like an impossible thing to bring to life, he did it, and it was a massive, massive venture, complicated, under the hood. But I think to work in this, world of VC venture debt startups, I think you do have to be a believer in sometimes what might feel impossible. I think I'm a natural optimist. So being in an environment where I got to meet people who were thinking outside the box, were reimagining the future, was so exciting for me. And I really, was like, gosh, take me on this journey. I kind of want to help you in whatever way I can to make this a reality.
Do you remember any interesting story from your time at Silicon Valley Bank, like something that struck you while you were working there?
God, I mean, we were
It
we
could
were
be a
all
deal. It could be a deal. It could be, working with founders.
yeah, and gosh, I distinctly remember the early days of Entrepreneur First. Obviously, it's a well-oiled machine now, but I remember when they were just in one of the Google campuses, before they got any proper office, and you have all these founders, really bright-eyed, very, very young entrepreneurs coming up with all these ideas. And I think what really stood out for me was I was helping them set up their bank accounts because this was the first time we were doing this. So definitely cohort one, but just the fluidity of the team structure, and having one week I would set up company with 6 founders, and I just remember then the next week they come back and they said actually it's 4 founders, and I would say, can you guys decide how many people you're working with? And it just really struck me. Obviously it's in those sort of setups, it's sort of trial and error. It's dating. Ultimately you're trying to figure out who's going to make the best match for your company, and I think it made me recognize that it's important to be decisive as well, because I guess they figured out at certain points that certain people weren't going to be the right match for their business and would not be the right fit to take them on that journey. And they made a decision that actually it was time to go. And that really stuck with me, how important it is to cut ties when you know something's not working. I think many startups leave that too late in an attempt to give it one more go or be kind. And I think there is no room when you are building something really great. You have to be decisive and you have to act fast. And I think it's not a case of being nice or not nice. It's like, what is best for the business at that time? And I think that really stuck with me. But more importantly, just watching a bank being built, being on that journey, you can't cut corners. And I think that really stood out to me. It was all hands on deck, all of us, didn't matter whether you're venture debt or, opening the bank accounts, everyone was involved in the testing because we all had something to prove. And we knew that it was super time critical. If we wanted to get that license and actually be able to deliver on certain objectives, it was all hands on deck. It was late hours and we did it. And, in this real startup-y just energy. And it was the best time, honestly. I learned so much from that period. Yeah, it was real, like, it felt like I was in a Silicon Valley movie. Yeah, genuinely.
That's a good way to explain that. We need to talk about how you taught hundreds of women how to code. Like, that's such an impressive thing to do, especially at the time that you did it as well. Because I think, if we had that now, it would be massive,
Yeah.
right? But what drove you to starting Moms in Tech?
Yeah, moms in tech. Wow. When I think back, I think what I was definitely in a different frame of mind to my first maternity leave. And I think having had that experience of going back into the office at, gosh, I think my son was 14 months when I went back in, and feeling that I had lost a sense of myself because I devoted that whole time to being an excellent mother. I forgot what it meant to be June. I forgot what it meant to do my work to, the best of my ability. And I think um, that feeling of wholeness was really important to me. I wanted to come back feeling like myself, but even better. And then I started thinking about how can I upskill? How can I keep my brain engaged, the second time round? And there really wasn't much available. There was a lot online, but more importantly, all the in person things were all targeted towards children. And I thought, well, what about us? What if we want to use this 12 months off to learn a new skill alongside other people. So it really struck me that, first of all, we'd been forgotten when it came to learning, but it was this missed opportunity where, a woman has a little bit more flexibility. It's a sabbatical that we kind of get given. And obviously the caveat being, obviously everyone's circumstance is different. I obviously felt, very energetic at that time and really wanted to meet other people who were on that learning journey as well. So I thought, look, why couldn't there be, a place where moms could learn about technology? I had this great opportunity to work with all these really interesting entrepreneurs, and I felt there was probably that missing bit where I couldn't have a technical conversation with them. Coding was just going on the national curriculum, and I thought to myself, well, perhaps I could learn to code. You learn one skill and it really boosts your confidence. And I think starting it was definitely the way to go. I think if I hadn't begun on Codecademy, Mums in Tech may not have existed, but it was when I reached a point where I needed extra help and I felt, well, I would like a teacher in front of me. And I remember, obviously at this point, bear in mind, super shy at work. So I didn't have any public sort of presence. I really was not leveraging LinkedIn, or I didn't think even I had an X account, or what was Twitter. And I had to really dig deep and say, well, if I really want this to happen, I'm going to have to step out of my comfort zone. So that was the first thing that kind of hit me. I said, well, I can either sit here and be sad that it doesn't exist, or I can try and figure it out. And then that was when something really shifted in me. So I went on LinkedIn. I remember looking for coding schools just to see what was out there. And my initial thinking was, well, if I can find a coding school that does something, for either for girls or anything generic, could they adapt and do something for moms? So I did, reach out to an amazing woman, Alida Alwis. I always shout her out because she was so generous to me. And I messaged her and I said, would you mind having a chat with me? I'd love to learn to code, and I have an idea. And the idea obviously was, can you run this course? But so we meet for coffee, and I think it was, we had a really long chat. But at the end of it, she said to me, basically, they couldn't run it, but she's like, well, why don't you do it? And I'm like, me? I've never built anything in my life. Where would I even start? She goes, well, first, I'll make one thing easy for you. I can introduce you to ThoughtWorks. They have space. So I was like, okay. So I have a venue. And then I said, well, am I going to run this course? I want to be the student. I'm really thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening here? But then I say to myself, actually, well, I kind of know what I'm missing and what I want to learn. So that evening I remember going home and thinking, okay, what would I like to see in this course? And how do I make it exciting and enticing for someone else to come and join me? So I started joining the dots, and I decided I was going to give myself 4 months to figure it out. The space had been booked. So she connected me, locked it in. And I'm like, okay, I need to go find a way to build a curriculum. And then I need to go figure out who's going to teach it, because it's not me, because I want to be the student. And my first instinct was to kind of reach out to people in my network. Obviously, I'm working with these amazing entrepreneurs. I know they can code. I know they know about tech. So my first teachers were actually from Entrepreneur First, and like a community called Ada. And it just was so amazing how generous the tech community was. I think I put out a call, and within a week I had all these offers of people saying they would help. They would help me teach, and they'd help me figure out the curriculum. And I then put a call out for, moms who might be interested in technology, who might want to learn to code. And I had 200 people apply. It was crazy. It was crazy just how many people. And I had to like whittle it down. And I just remember thinking, there's something here. If this many people are interested in learning something new, there's clearly a gap in the market. So I figured out a system, decided to run 2 cohorts back to back. It was actually crazy because I had space only for 15 people in the room, and I will try and dig out pictures if you want to share with the audience. That first room, I will never forget. We had like a beanbag in the corner, and then in the front, we had like mats for the babies. I had SVB cover the costs of childcare. So they had nannies and with us in the rooms, all the babies in the front, all the moms ready to learn. And then we had incredible instructors teaching classroom style. And, I look back at that very first picture and, really like it makes me a little bit teary sometimes because I just think all these people, like they travel. I had people traveling way outside London to come to this thing. Sometimes it was just for an hour and a half. And I just think there was such a need and they trusted me. And I was very transparent with them. And I just remember that first email saying, don't come with high expectations. This is an experiment. I have no idea if it's going to work, but let's go on this journey together. I wasn't charging anything. So I felt that gave me that freedom. That was my MVP. But it didn't mean that I didn't go into it with this sense of deep responsibility. These are people who, first of all, give me their time, and I owed it to them to give them the best experience. I remember like really putting on a feast. So I didn't joke with my snacks. Anyone who attended Mums in Tech will know, we had a really good array of food always. So they were well fed. They had incredible, people coming in to run the courses. But I think more importantly, there was this great sense of community of learners, which, we ended up bringing together. And it was a wide walk of life. When you think about people who were doctors, we had lawyers, we had, ambulance women, we had, what's it called? Not the fire truck. Yeah. The
Firefighters?
firefighter. We had a female firefighter. We had teachers. It was such a diverse group, but they all came together, on this kind of powerful journey, to want to learn alongside each other. So it was very collaborative. We had so many volunteers being there where people had homework to help them, outside of classes. So it was an 8-week course. And over that time, everyone would learn about agile, product, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And at the end, work on a project, which meant, they built their first websites. And just seeing them at the graduation, talking about why they, went on that journey and just the confidence that they felt having now, learned all these new skills. It was the most rewarding thing.
And are you still in contact with any of the
Loads.
moms?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's, it's friendship for life. Because it was, just shy of 250 women over the 3 years.
That's a lot of moms.
I know. Considering it was very much, bootstrapped. I, didn't raise funding. We charged very fractional amount because I wanted it to be accessible. So it very much was more of a social enterprise. For me, it was very important that, nobody was priced out.
Got it.
And, they could participate.
And what would you say was the biggest challenge for you? And what was the biggest achievement for you running Moms in Tech?
Yeah, I think with anything that's in person, scaling, it's really hard to scale that. Logistics were tricky. Can't be in two places at the same time. So it ended up being one after the other. And, just back to that thing of how do you make, if you consider it an ed tech ultimately, how do you make these things, first of all, accessible? If I really wanted to charge market price, I would really be pricing everyone out. And then it goes back to being, that thing of you have to make it completely online if you want to get to scale. So finding that balance, I think, was really hard because you lose some of that community spirit when you just move it online, which is what everyone said. There was people who said, well, move to a recruitment model. And then I was like, I don't want to be a recruitment firm. So finding the right business model was very tough. And obviously you can't rely permanently on sponsorships. There were some, that was subsidized and that we had free space. And we were very lucky that meant we could keep the price really low. And we had lots of volunteers because we essentially would leverage the tech teams at places like Skype, Marks and Spencer, and ThoughtWorks, and Ministry of Justice. I mean, I couldn't afford these people. They were incredible. And I'm so grateful that they gave up their time week after week. But I think, you get to a point where you feel a little bit nervous about continuously asking for that. So I think that was a hard one. While it was great, from a community perspective, I think when you think about the longevity of a business, it's very hard to just build it over that foundation. And I think for a long time, I really tried to crack that one. And I I couldn't. I couldn't. And I think it's really tough when you get to the point and you realize it's not sustainable.
It's not working. Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
and as an entrepreneur, when you get to that stage, it's your baby, something you brought to life. Saying goodbye is very hard. It's very hard. So I won't pretend that's definitely the hardest bit.
And I've also been in that situation as well, where I had to, well, not literally kill a baby, but kill my baby, right?
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, right? Because you started this, from an idea stage, and you built it and you executed and you kind of worked hard to make, and people actually worked with you to make it happen. What advice do you have for anyone out there? Could be an entrepreneur, could be anybody. When you get to that crossroads, like, how do you make that decision to actually, say, okay, you know what, this is not working, let me try something else? Or should I still continue, should I still give it a
Yeah.
go? Because it's a balance, right? Like, how, what advice do you have for people that are in that particular situation?
Yeah, it's tough. And obviously I've had to, you know, speak to entrepreneurs, in portfolio companies who were at that cusp of should I, shouldn't I? How do you make that decision around when is the right time to walk away? And I think, obviously this when things start to get tough, I think obviously you start to recognize, maybe for whatever reason, you know, the team dynamics aren't working, or it could be you're just not getting the sales and traction that you thought you were going to get. Obviously every business starts off with a plan, and when you start to see that plan is just not working, either maybe your costs are skyrocketing, you're not getting the revenue momentum, you're not getting the fundraising that you thought you were going to get, things are just feeling like really, pushing up a hill, and you're not getting there. It's just like something's pushing you backwards constantly. I think there's obviously two things, all dependent on whether you have the runway to continue to iterate and see if you can pivot a little bit to try something different. And sometimes that's what it takes. It's tweaking, the business model. And then there's also that reality of, do you still have enough steam in you as a founder? Because that's very, very important. If this is 10 years in and it's still not working, you might be like, I'm done. I've given it a fair go. This year one, and you still see a bit of a spark, and I've seen this with founders, where they were just about to give up, and then something clicks and they make the necessary, whether it's cuts in team, necessary pivot, and it's like takes a new life of its own. So that can happen. But I think when you genuinely know in your heart of hearts that you've tried every, tweak, and, investors are telling you, if you've got investors, they're saying, actually, perhaps we need to have a conversation. We need to start making a plan, and give ourselves till a certain time to explore, a few paths. Um, and then it's really sitting with yourself and saying, you've, given yourself a good go, given this a good run. And I say this to founders, especially ones who have come to that realization. I say, look, you have done the best that you could within this environment. So maybe the market has changed. Maybe when you set off to begin this journey, it was a very different environment, and certain things were on trend. And it's D&I, for example. If you happen to be building in that space, this is a terrible time. And I think it's fair to say you can pivot, because it's not going to work. You either start a new business, and I think you have to shut it down, because it's just going to be banging your head against a wall. And I think it's just a very, very tough time to build, those sort of businesses. But yeah, having the grace to be sort of truthful about what you've accomplished, but actually why, no matter what you do, this business just will not exist, in this particular environment. Not to say it's an easy conversation, but I think, if you have the right investors on board, the right advisors, they will work with you to sort of do this proper exit. And I've seen people do very, very well, communicating to existing customers. If it's something you have to discontinue, and you have a small group of loyal customers who've loved it and want to continue having access to it, you know, having a conversation, exploring the options. Maybe there is an opportunity to sell this to another geography where it might be better suited, but actually making a plan to ensure that either the business goes to another set of hands who has more, firepower, or a new geography where there might be a market for it, or accepting that it's a completely, we're closing our doors, doing things properly in terms of, all your suppliers, making sure that it's orderly. First of all, give you that peace of mind. And you'll know that you've done everything to the best of your ability, and you close gracefully. I've seen some beautiful sort of exit letters from founders, and I think maybe that's more for them. And I think that's a good exercise to kind of help you process what has happened, because in the initial period, it will feel intense and it will feel all a little bit
Overwhelming as
strange.
well.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can definitely feel very over. Yeah, absolutely. So writing it down, I think, is a good way to process those feelings, and I think give yourself some time to just decompress. When I stopped doing Mums and Tech, it kind of coincided with me having my third child, so it was a natural pause. And I think I was so tired at that point because I really did want to carry on, but it just was not the right time, from a personal perspective, but also just we knew that the models just didn't work for us. So I gave myself that space to, first of all, grieve the business, but also figure out, what I wanted to do next. And I think what people need to remember is that you're coming out of this process with so much more, from a skills perspective. Personally, I think you grow through this, whether you want to or not. It tests you in so many ways as to how you pick yourself back up. And it's, for me personally, I had to think about, I felt like I needed something that was going to be super grounding, but would still allow me multiple touch points with entrepreneurs, because I knew that had not left me. So venture capital felt like the next best alternative. I kind of live vicariously through the founders, but more importantly, I think having been through that struggle of trying to fundraise and realizing just how broken the system was, I said, well, I need to get on the other side of the table and make it better for other founders. So I really felt like I was pulled into VC by this personal mission, really wanting to see things be different and better for entrepreneurs. And I felt like there just wasn't much representation.
It's kind of an interesting segue, because my next question was around you being drawn towards Samos, right? Was the recruiting different? Were you called? Were you headhunted this time, or did you go looking for them?
Funny enough, I didn't know anything about them. It was and serendipity. So there was a little period which I haven't actually mentioned after Mums and Tech and before having my third child. I was actually on a program called Zinc, which some people may know. Zinc was started by Ella Goldner and Paul and Sol Klein from Local Globe, and it's very much like Entrepreneur First, but more for socially minded businesses. And I was on this for about 3 months because I knew I wasn't going to finish, but it was a great opportunity to experience what it was like to be on an accelerator program, company building program. And on that journey, I came across some really awesome people, one of which was Czech Warner, who was running Diversity VC at the time. And I remember when I sort of was realizing I'm not going to be an entrepreneur again, I want to go into venture capital, had a good conversation with her. And she was like, have you spoken to Samos? I don't know who they are. Tell me a bit more. And honestly, when I opened up, the website and started to see the kind of companies they backed and what they did, I didn't know much about family offices at the time. It just felt like this could be home. Again, having come from, a big family business, I just felt like I might fit in there. Actually, I knew I didn't want to work for a very big VC, so that was also something that I knew I was very certain of. But anyway, I went in, had a fantastic chat, and I just felt like we were on the same page in terms of how we wanted to support entrepreneurs. I was really excited about, the fact that they back companies right from pre-seed up to, early Series A, but ultimately it's patient capital. So very much a case of, really supporting companies for as long or short as they want us, which I think it's such a unique way to operate. And it felt right. I liked the breadth of the portfolio from, massive companies like Betfair and Charlotte Tilbury, and then obviously, really game changing financial tech companies like Moneybox. And, having been on that saving journey myself, I thought, well, this is a great, perfect timing. And I knew the founder of CoroKid, so I had firsthand, intel on just how great, the firm was in terms of how they worked with their founders. And I think that was really important to me, to be really part of an ecosystem that had, founder care sort of at the heart of it.
And what came first? Was it Samos that came first or your first angel investment?
It was Samos first. And I got to actually learn a bit more about angel investing watching the Samos founders, because alongside Samos, they also do a lot of direct investing. Then I joined communities like Alma, which were great for just understanding, well, you don't have to do a massive check. Because again, I thought that was a bit intimidating. Sometimes when I thought of angel investing, I thought, oh, you have to put in 100K. And I'm like, I haven't got 100K to give anyone. But we're recognizing that, there's this thing called syndicates, and, you can work as part of a group of,
Yeah, and you can write as low as
individuals,
1,000 as well,
which
2,500
yeah,
even.
same. I had no idea that was even a possibility. So I think really going on that angel journey was such an eye opener, and knowing that, if you've got something valuable to contribute to a founding company, that's actually way more important than the check. So sometimes they take it as a token, so you're on the cap table, but it's the skills that you can add, whether it's strategy or partnerships, opening doors, fundraising. These are all super valuable. And I started to recognize that actually maybe I could contribute in other ways other than through the fund, being able to write some checks.
Do you remember your first angel investment?
I do. My first investment was into a company called Blue Money. It was started by Nina Mahanti, and it's actually a saving circles company. So very similar to what we have in Nigeria with the Agro system, and digitizing that experience. And I just was blown away by just how many other countries had something similar but had never been digitized. It was literally, people handing cash from person to person. And I thought, well, this is perfect, because not only are you allowing them to build up a track record, and their financial scores, and really giving them the opportunity to access other financial products, it's perfect. There's a massive market for it. So that was the first check. And then I invested in companies like By Rotation, always a company that has a female founder. That's sort of been my thing. Odin, which is actually the company that I use to do all my investments into African startups. So I'm an investor there as well. And I think it's been a great journey, because again, as an investor, when you're an angel investor, I think you get, you can be a bit more hands-on, especially if they need you. It's very much, you go with the flow. It's less structured. And I think I really enjoy that, because you're really betting on the person.
What does it take to part ways with your money as an angel?
Yeah.
Like, because it's it's
Yeah.
it's um it's different from being a VC, and you know this as well, right? But what do you
Absolutely.
like? What does a founder have to do to convince you to part way with your hard-earned money
Yeah, exactly. We all know, especially if you're trying to get a ticket to Nigeria, it's not cheap.
at all?
It's not cheap at all. No, it's a good question, because I always say, it's something that everyone should know. See, when you make an angel investment or any investment, you have to be ready to part with that money permanently, because there is no guarantee with any investing. It's all a risk. We all know that. But even so, when it's your personal money, mom of three, mortgage, there's bills to be paid. But I think you're right. So when I do part with money, it's very personal. And I think we'll start there, because it's very much a case of I'm betting on the founder. And I believe that the founder, has that hustle in them and really wants to make it work. It has to be something that I deeply care about as well, especially if it's my personal money. So with Nina, that was a given. Incredible background. I just felt like she had the toolbox. If it was just her in the business would still work, because she was going to make it work. She was going to give it her all. So I knew this was someone who was totally obsessed with the problem, and I felt like there was a massive market for it. Same with Ashita, super driven, built this incredible following, just wasn't scared to put a product out there, scrappy, get it out into the hands of customers, was just doing the work. And today, by rotation is massive. It really has an incredible user base and really proven people wrong. Obviously, there'll always be naysayers. So, you also have to be willing to have strong conviction in these businesses, because I'm not relying on an investment committee. I have to make that bet. So I have to be willing to back myself in that sense of, okay, I believe what they're doing and I think that they've done the work. So I don't believe in lazy investing. I will still write a memo. I will really think about why this business has legs and why I think it has a massive opportunity. Again, with angel investing, it may not necessarily be unicorn status you're going for. Obviously, that would be the dream, but I think I'm personally willing to back a company that maybe will get to 300, 500 million. I think that's obviously a really nice outcome for someone who's putting a small check in. So I think, yeah, for a founder to wow me, to get me to part with cash, I really want to see, the hustle, but I want to work with good people. I want to, someone asked me the other day, would I back a founder who I thought was questionable? And I said, no, because why would I? Because
Never
I'm
ends
going to give
well.
you, I don't think it does. There are people who say, well, if they're really smart, they will give them money. And kudos to you. I personally want to back founders who I feel, I don't think it's that hard to, build a company on strong foundations, where you're putting your employees, at the heart of the way you build and, really think about what good your business is doing in the world. Those are the companies personally I want to see succeed. And where I have some spare change here and there, I will give it to them so that they can do that. And more importantly, I will work hard for them. So I think one thing founders will always say about me is they know that I'm going to work darn hard. Literally, I am that founder. You can ping me whenever. I've got Femi, obviously investing in Africa as well, pinging me on WhatsApp. Can you sort out, letters for, whether it's their visas or things like, I will do, and I will do it quick. But it's, knowing that I will be there through thick and thin. Because again, I've made that decision that I really believe you, and I believe that you're gonna, take this as far as you can. And I think that's really important, just give it your best shot. That's all I can ask. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, I will still clap for you.
I mean, you've heard it here already now. So if you do all these things, you would, get some money from June. So I read a quote from you, and I'll read it verbatim. It says, "I feel so strongly that I was put on this earth to be an agent of change." And I wanted to find out, like, when did you come to that realization that this was your purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, wow. It's always
Do you remember writing that or saying that?
I do, and I think it's something that I felt for a while. I think it finally clicked during the time, running Mums in Tech, when I had so many incredible women putting their trust in me. And I think I had to pause and say to myself, if I don't do this, if I don't kind of listen to the voice, I feel like I'm failing them. It probably that moment when I had to make the decision about whether to go back into full-time work was really something really hit me, that I have this deeper purpose that I need to fulfill. And I knew that I was put here to change lives, whether it was advocating for things that I felt were super important. Because I've always felt that, I want to be the voice in the room for those who don't necessarily feel like they can speak up. I wanted to be the one that would harp on about the issues they were facing and just make sure that they're not forgotten. And I think that's how I've made all my decisions to date, making sure that I choose opportunities that allow me to continue to get in the right rooms and to advocate for, women, underrepresented founders. These are things that I really care about, capital allocation, fairly. I think it's so important that we don't forget, you know, these issues that very easily could be swept under the carpet, because obviously we're, facing a lot of interesting geopolitical tensions, and there's a lot going on in the world. But I think we mustn't forget that at the heart of it, we need to ensure that there's an equal playing field. And that's something that I really do feel strongly that I have been lucky to have a platform to be able to talk about it, to be able to sit in the right rooms. I think having, the unusual background of being able to lean into the family office world, the VC world, the startup world, policy world, working with government, it's made it easy to continue the conversation in these rooms, and ensure that, until we get there, I'm going to keep talking about it.
How do you keep reminding yourself that this is your purpose? Because I mean, it's a lot, right? Like so many things you're thinking about, but you need to constantly remind yourself that this is why I'm here. What do you do? How do you keep challenging yourself?
Honestly, it doesn't take much. I think my last post on LinkedIn, is evidence. The headlines. It's just so frustrating to still see, companies not getting funding, women not being in positions of power. I talk a lot about, women on boards. We see that every time I walk into a boardroom, or, the numbers are there. The stats are abysmal. Emerging managers are still struggling to raise capital. The funding is nowhere near where it should be when we think about the continent. These conversations still need to be had because we're nowhere near where we need to get to. There's still so much work to be done. So I think the evidence is constantly being thrown at me, through conversations, and it's a perpetual reminder that the work still is ahead of us, and we should be trying different things, different tactics. I think there's a bit of an education process, but also I think we just need to keep showing up. Brilliant founders from underrepresented backgrounds just need to deliver. Use the resources you have. I think the most impressive founders, they bootstrapped. They weren't able to get the funding, but that did not stop them. They still persevered. They focused on the revenue. They got there. Show them with the numbers, and then they can't ignore you.
I want to touch on something very important, right? Your kids are adorable.
Oh, thank you.
Right. I've had the pleasure of meeting them in person. One thing I've noticed as well is that you never shy away from talking about them as a mom and just talking about the growth. I call it like parenting in public.
Yes.
It's just like building in
Yeah,
public as a founder, right?
absolutely.
Why do you do that?
Yeah, I've always been an open book. Um, you know, I don't think I've ever really been shy. I say I was shy in the office, but I think once I was in the right office, I was like, "Hey, this is me." But I think for me, I feel this deep sense of, um, take me as I am. And I think that this is me. This is my reality. I'm not trying to hide parts of me away to show up in a certain way. I think ultimately the whole start to show. And I think the more you're able to show up fully as yourself, I'm a Nigerian living in London. I come from a big family. All of these things shape me, and I don't shy away from talking about them because that's who I am. So if something comes up at home, and the kids, either if there's a challenge, or I'm tackling something, and maybe I've learned something, I always want to share, because you just never know. Somebody else might be watching, might be thinking about, oh, how do I hack this? Working mom, how do I work around, either tutoring or making sure my kids turn out great? And again, work in progress. I'm not perfect, but I do share our journey, because I just think the amount of comments I get, the amount of people who reach out to me saying, "Oh my God, by sharing that information, it's kind of made me feel like, okay, I'm doing something right." For me, that's really powerful. I think, the more of us kind of share our learnings, I don't think I'd be where I am today had I not had access to people who also shared their stories. People like Helena Morrissey, who have reached incredible heights in her career, and did all that, being a mom, I believe it's 10, 10 kids, maybe a little bit more, but she's incredible. And I just think genuinely, if those examples are not out there, then many of us just wouldn't necessarily feel like, oh, there's that optionality in terms of where you can get to in your career, or even just being able to do both.
Yeah, and as a superhuman that you
Ah,
are, you're a VC, an angel investor. You sit on boards, you take care of your kids. You're a mom, your wife, your family person. Who's there to support you? Like,
uh,
who's your support system? Like, how do you stay grounded as a human being?
yeah. Oh my goodness. So important. And, this has been something that over time I've recognized that it's so important to not forget me as someone who is a natural giver. I always put others before me. And historically I've been known to kind of give, and like, never ask for anything in return. But, I started working with a coach 3 years ago, and I think that was the best decision ever. It really allowed me to learn to prioritize myself and to put in place, boundaries so that I don't give way too much, and I make sure I carve out time to do things that I love doing. I love reading, I love dancing. You know me, I'm always up for a good night out, good dance. I love feeding people. So, I've recently been very intentional. Like I have a, monthly dinner with friends, and I put that in the calendar because that's really important to me. Those are the things that really ground me. So all my university friends, like we get together, and I'm always happy to host. But it's a space that I've carved out so that we find time to just. It's called Dinner and Laughs, and it's just a space to eat and like just talk about life and like have a good giggle. I make time for theater. I've been on like a concert streak. I love music. Coming from an entertainment background, it's really important to me that I make time to do these things. It's a great release. I love traveling. Um, with all of us who are busy, chasing dreams and like wanting to support founders, I think I've always said that it's important to, fill your own cup first. Back to the, the oxygen mask analogy that is often used. If I didn't have, these reserves, I wouldn't have anything to give. I would be broken and tired and grumpy. Um, so I do make time very intentionally to do, all the things that I really love to do. Once a week I'll, go for a walk. I started working with a PT who happens to be in Nigeria. She's amazing. Shout out to Dolly. And but these are things that we have to carve out time for. The time is not going to magically appear. So I make sure that I, spend time with the people that I care about and eat good food and, just relax. I took all of August off. And I think that's something, we started our conversation talking about that. I needed that time to recharge, and I use it to travel and to eat great food and spend time with my family. And I think, I've come back very excited about, meeting incredible entrepreneurs, and, it's given me a lot of new perspectives.
That's good. That's good. I'm happy that at least you found something that works, a formula that works for you, because I think it's super important, especially when you people like us were always busy, always trying to either solve a problem or build something or
Yes,
create something. It's easy to just forget that you're also a human being that needs support as well, right?
absolutely.
I know you're still very much part of Samos, right? But you started, I was going to say recently, but it's been 3 years now that you started Levare, right? It's an angel syndicate. Can you tell us more about what you do on that side of things, and what your focus is, where you invest in, and what's the best way to get money from you too?
Yes, I started Levare in 3 years ago. It's been really, I feel like it's gone really fast, and so much has happened in that time. And it really stemmed from having gone to Lagos with the Google team in 2021 and being blown away. This was the cohort with Piggy Vest, and I just thought there's so much, on the ground that I've just not been paying attention to. And it made me want to spend more time with African founders. I just had this, reinvigorated energy around them, because there's just so much work to be done on the continent, so much to be built, and so many, yeah, so many people whose lives will be changed as a result of these businesses. So I came back, full of vim, as they say, and I spoke to a couple of people about going on this journey with me. Obviously, I knew that I wasn't quite ready to start a fund, but I knew I wanted to invest alongside really smart people. So I reached out to other VCs, some really impressive ones as well. And they all said yes. And they were like, yeah, let's do this. We all agreed that we'd be focusing on e-commerce, fintech, health tech, future of work, and B2B SaaS. And as the starting point, focused on Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa. So I obviously was brand new to the market, but as a result of the Lagos trip with Google, had this great group of people that, suddenly I could tap into and say, well, if you're investing in stuff, let me know, because having people on the ground, that's kind of how you start. I'm never going to come in and say I'm the expert, because I'm not living in Lagos anymore. So I was really lucky that, for the first deal, Odun, I think it was Odun. Yeah, Odun reached out to me and told me about the Raynest deal. And that was my very first investment, which I got to investing alongside Ventures platform. I met Victor and Sojuldin and Richard, and was just blown away just by, first of all, their backgrounds. They have very impressive backgrounds in sort of building fintech companies, part of OPay and other companies like that. But I could see the opportunity, and I could just see the energy that they were bringing, and I just thought they were going to figure it out. So for me, back to the same way I think about my angel investing, thesis, it's a bet on the people, because there's going to be many challenges along the way. And actually, if you don't get the people right, the rest kind of falls apart. So I felt like they had strong enough networks to bring in the right people into the company. But, with the expertise they had, with all the companies that they've been a part of, I felt like they could figure it out, and I think that was really critical, because you're going to face way more challenges building in Africa versus building in the UK, just because the infrastructure just doesn't work. You're trying to build a fintech. Fintech is hard anyway. You need capital. I also felt they had good partners on board that were going to make it possible for them to get further capital down the line. Because again, we don't talk about that enough. It's not about that first round that you raise. Can you continue to get the resources you need to make your business a success? Because that's only going to keep, increasing. And the talent, you need to have that special selling power to be able to bring people on that journey with you, as well as sell to customers along the way. So I did feel like they had that. And the second deal was Chowdek. And again, we know that journey. It's an interesting one. I think we should obviously talk about price. It comes up a lot. It was expensive. And, many people would say it's an African deal. Don't spend too much on it. But you meet Femi, and I'm sure if you met Femi, you'll know what I mean. Like, he sold that. He sold the dream. And I felt he could do it. The team he'd assembled again, the people behind him, and just that expertise from
X Space Stack
literally.
well.
I mean, there's so many ticks, but when it really boiled down to, do I feel this individual is going to do everything it takes to make this a success? Yeah, I did feel that, even though YC had put a nice price on it by then, but it felt worth it. And I think we shouldn't get too bogged down by the price, especially if we believe in this, longer term vision for a business.
And especially if you still come in relatively early, because the journey is long,
It's
right?
long.
And there's no ceiling to how great they could be,
I
right? And
agree.
so understanding your strategy, obviously, as a syndicator, as a fund, or as an angel, is super important as well. And
Absolutely.
not letting that stop you from making your investments or backing the right founders when you see them. So
100%. And I think, similar to angel investing for the Africa syndicate, I wanted to come in early. And I know many people think that's quite a big gamble because you're still working with less data. Um, but I did feel like this space, yeah, Jumia had started tackling it, but there was still so much to be done. And they were approaching it so differently that I just felt, let's see where this where this goes. And then, edtech is still very much one that I deeply care about. So when Cradle came along, and I found out about Cradle from the Enza team, I thought also I absolutely love, what Shane is doing and the opportunity here to do something similar to, what UCAS had achieved in the UK, and unifying the way to apply for schools and, making it possible for the process to be a bit more streamlined in what is often a chaotic process with, working with consultants. They are democratizing it, making it cheaper and more unified. So really bullish on sort of the edtech space as well. And so we've made 9 investments to date, and really, really excited to continue deploying. In terms of check size, we do up to 100K. So it's that first check in. But again, I always say it's more than the check. You're getting access to the people sort of behind the syndicate as well, who really can open a ton of doors.
and what do you find is the difference? Because I think I know what the similarities are in being an angel investor, having a syndicate, and also working for Samos. Like there's a common theme there, right? But what do you find is the difference between the three as you navigate each of them?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, my heart is when it's your angel investments or the African. Those are my babies essentially. I get to operate a little bit differently, or more as June, if I'm being very honest, and I kind of get to go full steam ahead and kind of just move fast because, especially as an angel, I'm just sense checking myself. So I can kind of get on with it when I'm, with a Levare hat. I'm in let's get things done mode. Let's move fast. I think it's the speed within which you can move. It's a lot faster.
What's the next mountain you're trying to climb?
Ooh.
What's that? What's coming up? What's exciting for you? What's on the horizon? Because I
Yeah.
feel like with you, there's always something coming up.
Okay, no, I think it's a good question. You're right. I'm never one to just kind of rest on my laurels. I think at this point, I'm really just trying to think about, getting these incredible companies that we've backed over the last 3 years to a point where, they're able to truly operate on a level playing field. I'm always thinking about capital and moving capital from Europe to Africa. So deepening my connections sort of in the family office world and thinking about who would be the next person for these great entrepreneurs to speak to. But more importantly, just how do we deepen our ties so that a lot of our businesses on the continent can find more market opportunities, whether it's in Europe or the US or even in the Middle East, but really thinking about what does expansion truly look like? Where are the next frontiers for their customers? We in the fintech space especially, I think maybe that's been a little bit easier to prove the global opportunity. I think there's still more work to be done. Some fashion companies have obviously crossed over, but I think it's obviously still a bit niche. I want to see a real Africa to the world happening, where we can increase, um, you know, the revenue base. I think that's going to be really, really critical to really demonstrate why investors should be flooding to the continent. We need to demonstrate that we can build really large businesses, and that will have global interest.
What advice do you have for women that obviously look like you, want to be like you, see you as a role model? What would you tell them if you had a few minutes with them?
Yeah, and I think for me, it's First of all, when I think about what allowed me to kind of find myself, find my voice, I think it's community. I think it's really important to lean in to your community. If you don't feel like you have one, create one. I think we underestimate the importance of our voices. I think don't ever feel like there isn't space for one more. I'm very much a believer in the pie gets bigger. So I think really find your people that root for you. I think I couldn't have done any of this without, the cheerleaders who kept saying, you can do it, you can do it. I think we need that. We need that energy in the beginning. Surround yourself with the right people. I had a good friend of mine who told me about her, how she thinks about, her personal life and career life. And she has like an advisory board for personal life and an advisory board for career. And I think that is something to think about, having people around you, not yes people, but people who will push you and encourage you to step into your fears, because half the time this is not always going to feel comfortable, but be willing to continue to stretch yourself and to equip yourself with the right tools. So for me, it was getting a coach. It was continuing to read widely and upskilling at necessary times, and not being afraid to step into something before you're fully ready. Because half the time they always say, do the job before you get the title. And I really, really do believe in that. Like, don't be afraid of hard work, show up, but always like deliver excellent work.
I do have this game I play with my guests called If You Only Knew Questions. Um, and I'll just read out a bunch of questions for you. And, you don't have to think too much. Just give me whatever answer that comes to your
Okay.
mind. Okay. So, who never fails to make you laugh?
My goodness, this is such a hard one. I have a really good friend from university, and she always makes me laugh. So, yeah, one of my friends.
Okay. Best piece of advice you ever got?
Ah, this is hard. I've met so many wise people, but um, I always, maybe I just think of my grandpa here. Just always treat people as you want them to treat you. I think it's, show up well always.
Something you wish you were better at?
My goodness. My husband will say he wish I could mow the lawn. I need to learn to swim. So that's one thing is on my list.
What superpower would you like to have?
Oh my God. I want to be GPT. I want to just be able to soak up all this knowledge and like have a filing system in my brain. I probably would be one of those people who would be willing to put a chip in their brain if it meant I could organize it better.
It's gonna happen.
I
Don't
think
worry,
so.
it's
I
gonna
think we're going to have to
happen.
accept that's our new life.
Biggest risk you ever took?
Definitely giving up a stable job and doing mums and tech. That was very scary.
Longest period you've been awake for?
Awake. Oh my goodness. Maybe this last trip to Mexico. It was a very long day. I think it might
Okay.
have been 26 hours or so. No,
Wow.
way more actually. No, because we were, yeah, it would have been like 30, would have been like 38 hours actually. Yeah, it's about 38.
I hope you were having fun and not working.
Well, 3 kids, debatable.
Best tech products right now?
Ooh, I am genuinely loving GPT. I know it's cliche, but I use it multiple times a day. And I think it's great for someone who consumes so much information. I think it's been an incredible tool to just have at my fingertips.
What era in history would you have loved to experience?
Ooh, I don't know. Experience, observe. I'm obsessed with Henry VIII. I would love to see him in action. I don't want to like interact with him because that man was brutal.
He was,
He
he
was brutal, but I
was.
would like to be a fly on the wall.
If you could talk to an animal and the animal could talk back to you, which animal would you love to talk to?
It would be a bird. It'd be a bird because I'm obsessed with like I love flying now because I love to see the world from really high up. A big bird who could like take me up there as well. I would like that's pretty cool.
Okay. And lastly, what food could you eat every day?
Easy jollof.
I just knew it.
Easy. Easy. Good
I knew
no,
it had to be a rice dish.
mama. It has to be mama puts. It has to be mama put. Buka jollof,
With a firewood,
firewood, really
you know.
spicy. I could eat plates of that, and I will never be bored. Yeah.
So you haven't lost your spicy tongue
No.
yet,
Oh my
right?
god.
Good.
Like I'm upset. My mom brings me like chili from Lagos every trip. I love my chili, but it has to be Lagos chili.
This was very great, June. Thank you very much
Oh,
for spending time with me. I really, really enjoyed it.
thank you, Daya. It's super fun.
Awesome.